I would reverse engineer it and make sure that there's enough opportunity within the market before you start to specialize. And then I would say, hey, if you want my ebook, and I didn't even have an ebook, I would get 75 recommendations or, 5-star reviews. You're kind of faking it till you make it. I truly believe that recruitment is about connections. It's about relationships.
Mick Donaghy is the founder of Gedon Executive, the quantity surveying and cost management expert recruitment business. I've known Mick since I pretty much started Hoxo. We were interacting in October 2017, 8 years from when I'm recording this episode. A couple of years later, though, he started his own business. And in the first year of launching his brand and his business, Gedon, he went from $7,000 in the bank to keep himself alive to 1.4 million Australian dollars in the first year. Mick's built a brand. He's built a business around himself. It's lean. It's 40% profit margins. It's completely global. And he goes right into the detail of how he's done it. So let's get into it. Mick, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Sean, it's a pleasure. I'm honored to be here after so long.
I know. I feel like we should have done this a long time ago, but time is now.
It's the way time goes, mate. I was in Australia and New Zealand for nearly 10 years, so we're finally on the same time zone. So I'm excited.
You were definitely one of the first names I remember in like 2017, 2018 who were like, you were just interacting with all my shit. Like you were always liking my stuff. You were getting it. You were understanding. I was talking about stuff that maybe a lot of people were just like, what is this guy on about? But you understood it. So like, I feel like I've known you, even though I've not worked with you for that long, a couple of years. I feel like I've known you for like the best part of 9 years, pretty much.
Yeah, it's interesting because probably when I first engaged or noticed you or became aware of everything that Hoxo were doing, it was on Instagram initially. And I was following you guys on Instagram, and that's when I started to write a lot of content, push a lot of content out there, and then it just snowballs, doesn't it? The more that you stick to it, the more it gets traction. So yeah, but it feels like a long time ago now. Jeez, it feels.
Look, I'm looking October the 29th, 2017. Sean, cheers for the message on Instagram too. Your profile looks pretty cool, and it's good to see some innovation in our industry. How have you found leaving your desk to do something different? You sent me that in October, so that's 8 years ago.
That's me probably thinking of how do I exit recruitment.
Really?
I've always had a love and hate relationship with recruitment. I mean, I think everybody does. It's one of those industries that you enter by mistake, and then it feels very hard to leave, and you make such good money and good contacts, but yeah, it's always been in the back of my mind. So that was probably what I was doing.
So you were at Franklin Smith in Australia. You just left Vickerstock in Ireland, right?
Yeah.
So, look, before we get into the past, just give us a quick, I don't want any detail, just what you do, where you're based, the people you've got right now, and then we're going to go and tell your story from Australia to where you are.
So in a nutshell, I'm the owner of Gedon Executive Recruitment. So we specialize purely in one discipline within the construction sectors, that is quantity surveying and cost management. So I'm based in Belfast now. We operate across Ireland, the UK, Europe, Australia and New Zealand. I've just spent the last 9.5 years living in Australia and New Zealand. So I've just recently returned home, and this is why our network is quite vast, So we've got 9 in the team. There's 4 consultants and then 5 offshore. So they're a mixture of marketing, admin, accounts, that sort of thing. So yeah, pretty interesting times, fast moving market, and we're here today to talk about it all.
You know what? I do think you're running almost like the perfect business to what I talk about, right? You're the founder, the face, you got the team, you got remote, everything is the same. It's interesting though, the fact that was it about a year ago you moved back to Ireland? It was about
October, the end of October 24.
Yeah. So to go back, I mean, you were living in I think New Zealand, to move. That's a long way to move back. How have you settled into that? Shifting back to being around people you grew up with and family and all that. What's it been like?
So first couple of months, it took a bit of time to adjust, So I was used to living in New Zealand predominantly for most of that time. I lived in New Zealand. I mean, it's an incredible country, very diverse. I would argue it's so vastly superior to Australia. Sorry to all my Australian contacts. It's just it's like Ireland on steroids, you know. So all the good parts of Ireland, you know, it's like that times 100. But coming back, you know, you're coming back into my home city. You know, it's got its good parts, it's got its bad parts. But I guess it took me 12 months of genuinely, you know, thinking deeply about it and whether it was going to be the right move or not. And to be honest, having moved around so much, there is never a perfect. There's never a perfect move. There's never a perfect location. You know, it's what you make it. And
The
you
more you
know,
move, though, the more that is difficult, because I look at my brother now. He lives out in Peru. He lived in Australia. He lived in London. Obviously grew up in Manchester. Went to Leeds. He's travelled India. He's travelled Africa. Like he's never really stopped moving. Now he's in Peru. He's bought a place. I still talk to him. And he's like, yeah, maybe we'll end up in Mexico. Like he's always like, the world has become this place to him. And I've lived in a lot of places too. You know, I think if you stay in one place, you can be comfy in one place. Whereas when you move around, like you've always got an eyeball on somewhere else.
exactly, 100%. The grass is always greener, no matter where you are. And to be honest, I feel like that's the learning curve. You go, well, it's not that Belfast is there's not anything inherently bad about it. You know, it's just that if you've got to scratch the itch, you sometimes you're just better off scratching it and getting out there and getting that experience. But you know, I've decided that my values now from when I left, when I moved to the other side of the world, are different. You know, I want different things now. So that was the real motivator for it and driver for it. But I've been pleasantly surprised and aware that we've had a beautiful long summer, which actually I wasn't expecting and we'll probably never see again. But, you know, I've settled. I've come to fall in love with Game of Ireland. You know, it's a magical place. We're at the such close proximity to all of Europe.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're living isolated, you know, in the middle of the South Pacific, you're 3.5, 4 hours away from any other major city. You know, that's pretty special.
Yeah, I bet. And is your partner Irish, or where's she from?
She's Kiwi, so she's from New Zealand, and I think she actually loves Ireland even more than I do. You know,
but then you've always got that, I guess, pull back. You can always go back and with her. You're going to go back and forward, aren't you? You're going to go and see it and stuff. You're going to have to.
Oh, of course. I mean, I'll always have a draw back to New Zealand. Her family live in Australia. We've basically said that we'll go back and visit every year, every couple of years, whatever it might be. But she's headstrong, you know. She's like, I'm never going back, you know. I'm like, geez, that's big. That's a big statement to make, you know. But you know, touch wood, feeling pretty settled.
Good on you, mate. Well, look, let's get into why did you leave then? Let's go back to that point. When you were in recruitment in Belfast, why did you end up moving out to such? I mean, I've done it. Was it? So why did you do it?
Mate, I was 25 years old, like any red-blooded Irishman at the time. You know, it's like you're moving. You know, we're inherently as Irish people, we do move around. You know, and I think it's part of our culture in some ways that you want to maybe experience. Whether you hear the old stories of the Irish building New York, moving out to Sydney. You know. And, you know, these stories come home. My old man, he spent a lot of time working out in Germany and Holland. And so you want these sort of, you know, life experiences for yourself. And, you know, I had a bit of, you could sort of inverted commas, bit of tragedy. My mum passed away when I was very young, well, in my 20s. And, you know, you look and go, life's too short. You know, what are we here for? So just decided to go out. I decided, at the time, only wanted to go and live in New Zealand for a year. And, you know, when I arrived, I realized that, you know, buying a pint was like, you know, $15. You know, I was like, I ain't ever making it as a coffee barista here, you know. And very, very quickly decided to get into recruitment, and, you know, here we go.
So the role that you had at Franklin Smith, I remember, because that was when we were talking, it was like you basically opened up a division for, didn't you almost start a business within a business for that?
Yeah. So I moved initially. I worked in New Zealand for them for about 3 years. So I was, you know, pretty much came in, you know, was their top biller within the first couple of years. Decided my wife, Amanda, who I met, her family lived in the Gold Coast, New Zealand's such a stunning place, but at the time, the first few years I was there, it rained, constantly, and I was like, I can't believe I've moved to Ireland, to another place where it rains all the time. So, you go to Gold Coast, you go to the Sunshine State, and you see like it's this beautiful, it's like, it's everything that you expect Australia to be. And then we moved over and give it a crack in Australia for a couple of years. I set up the Australian entity of Franklin Smith in Australia. We timed it horribly, 6 months before COVID. We actually started Franklin Smith, but yeah, it was what it was, and everything that we did in that time probably is benefited my business to where it is today.
So when did you know you were going to be your own boss? When did you know you were going to start your own business?
I mean, I've always known that I wanted to be in charge of my own decisions. Probably that was the main driver for me. I never wanted, there's some people run from conflict. I probably edge into conflict, to be honest. And I don't. I've always struggled with maybe being under someone else's management in some ways. I've always pushed back against that, whether that was in football teams growing up, in the classroom, in business. I think back to now how I was in my early stage of recruitment. I think I was such a dick. I was such a hard person to manage. But and I've always had that entrepreneurial flair. I've always been quite creative. I've always wanted to build something that is for me and for my people around me and for my family. So it's always been a driver inside me.
But was there something that happened in your role though that made you go, right, I'm going to do it now? What was the decision when did you make the decision and why?
So to be honest, it was probably somewhat pragmatic, because I knew I wanted to move to Australia from New Zealand, and I knew I needed a visa, and that was either going to be, I'm going to go on Amanda's visa, she's Kiwi, or I'm going to get sponsored from the work, So I kind of went in with an angle. It was, I'm going to go out and start there by myself, or you can come with me, kind of thing, and we do this together. And we decided to do it together, and we give it a crack for a couple of years, and didn't end up where we wanted it to be. But you learn a lot through those times, and I'm pretty grateful it happened in the end.
So how did you part ways with them?
It came to sort of a natural conclusion. So maybe sort of giving you a bit more context in terms of, we started the business in July 2019, 8 months before COVID, realistically. I got married a month before COVID, and then we didn't have any
living
clients.
In the Gold Coast there?
We lived in Brisbane, didn't have any clients, didn't have any candidates, had no relationships at all. Brisbane was a very, very quiet market. It was basically building up from scratch. There wasn't anything entrepreneurial about it. It wasn't like, that's I'm sitting in the boardroom making these fancy decisions or anything like that. It was like, it was getting on the phone and driving around, the country looking for business and recruiting for everything, in the construction sector. It was just all guns blazing. And then all of a sudden, March comes about, March 2020, COVID happens. We weren't making any money really, at the time anyway. And then all of a sudden, any money that we were making falls off a cliff. And then we go into this period of pretty much 18 months of, Australia was very, very strict in terms of the lockdown. So every state had its own lockdown. No one could get in, no one could get out. It was just a very challenging time. And then, I didn't bill. The business didn't make any money for 3-4 months. And it was literally just brutal times. You're not making any money. Money's not coming from anywhere. And, there's effectively, it was do or die kind of thing, So after a period of time working through all of that, I paid back any money that was put into the business by my business partner. and we decided that during that time, we were there for about 2.5 years, that we just didn't fall in love with Australia. It wasn't the place that we wanted to be. So we decided to move back to New Zealand. And then coincidentally, New Zealand had this, bubble around it. Everybody in, say, UK, Ireland, all around the world was looking at New Zealand because life was going on, as normal. I remember there was an All Blacks game in New Zealand and there was 50,000 people in the stadium.
Wow.
And this is when all the Premier League games were all shut down. They were all behind
Australia
doors.
is like Melbourne. You couldn't even leave your house, right?
You couldn't leave your house. So everybody was like, this is the real special place. And we arrived back in New Zealand on this bubble. So you had to get this bubble between Australia and New Zealand. You had to get all these tests before and after, et cetera, et cetera. And we arrived, and then within a week, New Zealand gets its first case of whatever, the Delta virus, whatever it was called. And it shut down completely. So we were sitting in a house with no furniture, can't see anyone. And we're back into the lockdown stuff again. So it was the lockdowns that probably pushed me more so than anything. They challenged me and just made me realize that, I just need more freedom, and it wasn't like my business partner at the time, there wasn't anything that he was doing. I mean, he was doing everything he can to keep me happy, but I just felt really compelled that if I'm doing this and if I'm putting all my effort in this, I need more than the shareholding I had at the time.
So they're paying you through this process, keeping the lights on, but you're not making any money. There's not much going on.
Yeah, I mean, we were, the business that we had, we were paying I was in breach of my visa. So the way it works in Australia, you have to be earning a certain amount, to actually be compliant with your visa. So it's like 70,000 Australian dollars. I was making something like, I don't know, $40,000 or something like that. I was making nothing. Like that was less than minimum wage. We were paying for ourselves. We managed to get grants and stuff like that, government grants. There was like a 10,000 come in here and another 10,000. We were just scraping by. And then after that sort of 3 or 4 months, we began to sort of make placements and pay our way. But evidently it wasn't what I wanted to do, and it wasn't where I wanted to be. And I just needed a bit of a fresh start more so than anything,
So Gedon, what does that mean? Where did that word come from?
It was my mum, the start of my mum's surname, and then my surname, my own surname is Donaghy. So it was just our two names merged together. And again, you have always talked about Hoxo being like it's a name that isn't resonated. It's not known for anything else, and same with Gedon. So I kind of took your inspiration on that, Sean. To be honest,
I'll take credit for that.
Yeah.
So you've got to get it tattooed on your wrist now, though. Have you got it?
Oh,
if you haven't got it, you need to do it. Yeah, you get your wedding day on your hand, and you need to get your company on your wrist. That's the goal.
Nice.
That's the ultimate goal. Now, so. Okay, so then take us on this journey. Then you're in New Zealand.
Yeah,
you're a new founder. Are we still in lockdown? Or are we out of that now? But when you're going after Gedon,
so we just left lockdown.
Right.
Literally within a few weeks.
Did you know at that point you were going to go all in on this quantity surveying and cost estimation stuff? Like, were you clear on that niche? Because it sounds like you're doing a little bit of anything up to that point.
Yeah. So what happened was during COVID, I was basically trying to make money from anywhere, so I was ringing mining companies, I was ringing energy companies, I was doing absolutely everything that I could just to beg, borrow, and steal just to get money through the door. And then as it so happened, we went back to what I'd known really well, which is quantity surveying and cost management, which I recruited for years in Ireland, and would have done some of that in New Zealand beforehand, and just started smashing it through there. I started the podcast at the time. Everyone started getting good value from it. It started just to snowball and build up. And I was like, right, there's something to this. Let's go for it. So when I started Gedon, it was right, I'm going all in on this one niche. And I didn't really know how that would take off, whether it would take off, how it would go. But, I effectively looked at, I was giving myself 3 months to start making money. So at the time, I had $7,000 to my name and was right, okay, how do we go about building this brand into, something that is recognized, is respected, and let's go for it. So very, very simple. It was, doing the things that what most founders do at the time. You go on Upwork, Fiverr or something like that, get a logo made for 60 quid. It's the same as still logo it is today. I built the website out from scratch. But none of that actually matters. No one gives a shit about any of that. What actually matters is just your reputation. And my reputation was built through not giving up during COVID, and basically when nobody else was ringing, I was ringing, and that's what mattered most. So $7,000, within 1 year, and I don't say this like just to put this out there, but I turned that into 1.4 million within a year. And the year previous to that, I'd built 150 grand.
Wow.
So
$1.4 million Australian or Kiwi dollars?
Australian dollars.
So that's like £700,000 in a year.
Yeah, and so I think I worked it out. I placed about 65 people in our first year. So I was placing someone every 3 days. So it was just, but that was, I can't take that out of context as well. The market had opened up again. So it wasn't, I'm not saying, I was doing something anything unbelievably unique, but most people made most money in 2020. I think it was 2022.
Yeah, 21, 22 were good years, right?
Were good years. And we were kind of in Australia and New Zealand, we were like a year behind the UK nearly as well, because our lockdowns seemed to just lag on for a bit longer and stuff. So that year was it was a tremendous year, and that really has, give us that foundation to move forward, into what we're doing now,
So what you've always done, and obviously I've worked with you on this, is like, you've not just sat there on the phone, you've put yourself out there on LinkedIn, you've been vulnerable, you've been open, you've had the podcast, you've produced your content. So what impact did that have? What impact? Because people always say to me, like, there's recruiting and there's that. And so many people see this as like a second thing that's distracting, but you've always seen it as part of the job. So what impact has that had on your business?
So one without the other wouldn't have the same impact, if that makes sense. Yeah. So you have to have both. Yeah. So I could sit and write content all day, but no one would engage with my content if they weren't getting the calls, the emails, the meetings. Truth be told, we're one of the biggest accounts that we had in Australia was because I was pestering the guy flat out, and I got him on the phone for 2 minutes, and I asked him, "Where are you? Where are you today?" And he's like, "I'm in this location." I was like, "How long are you going to be there for?" And I'm going to be there for the next half an hour. I would drive there immediately to meet him outside site, talk to him for 5 minutes. But he knows that I'm not just the bullshitter online who's, talking a big game. He knows that I'm actually backing up by doing the hard yards, by making the effort, showing up to his office on a Saturday morning when he has, a couple of hours spare. That's the difference. It's not one or the other. It's both at the same time. And I think I wouldn't have the same maybe personal brand that I have today if it wasn't for all of those, I remember during COVID, I had nothing to do. So I was getting grads online I was doing webinars with them. And then I would say, "Hey, if you want my ebook," and I didn't even have an ebook, but I was just like, "Hey, if you want my ebook, give me a recommendation on Google," and I would get 75 recommendations or, 5-star reviews, and just so then I was like, right, I need to write an ebook, but you're kind of faking it till you make it. And I think content, it's just another layer to a business development approach. It isn't the business development approach.
I completely agree that, like, I always say this, like, there's if you're just sat on LinkedIn all day sending out messages and pinging out content, that is not the game. What I get really excited about is when I meet people like you that were trained the traditional way. You've got that fight, you've got the energy, you're prepared to pick up the phone, you can sell, you can impact, you can do the job. Because when you add a layer on top to that, it's dangerous, right? Whereas when you've got if you're just doing the hard work you always did, I think you'll make money, but I think you're nowhere near going to reach your potential. And then if you just sat on LinkedIn all day and you can't do the rest of the job, well, no, you're not going to do much at all. But it's the combination, and you've always shown that. But so 1.4 million in year one. What happened next? Because you started building a team then, right? You started investing in people around you. Were they based in Australia? How did that all start to grow?
So first, employees, and I think this is something as well that maybe, old school, recruiters out there and business owners, that might get scared of some of the offshore type stuff. It is a bit new. It's not even new, but it's slightly confronting. How do you manage teams offline, that sort of thing? I was at the time being based in New Zealand. As I said, I had $7,000. That $7,000 initially at the beginning was sort of to pay for me. It was for me to live in effect. So I didn't have much money at all. So I was looking at, everyone would typically in that area of the APAC region would look at maybe going to the Philippines. I didn't have enough money for the Philippines. The Philippines were like $15 an hour. And I was like, no chance I'm paying $15 an hour. I didn't have it at the time. So I started to look at other areas, and I actually looked into the Colombia as being an area to focus in on. And the first hire that we made, Oriana, she's still with us today, and she's basically our operations manager, systems admin. But she helped do a lot of running for me at the very beginning. Then I brought in sort of an internal resourcer, effectively in New Zealand at the time. And then we were just very, very busy. I know Patrick, he effectively helped me set up Franklin Smith in New Zealand. He moved back home to Ireland during COVID. I convinced him to come back to New Zealand. So then I added him. But my whole goal is I'm actually somewhat selfish, if I'm honest. I as I said at the beginning, I've always had this love-hate relationship with recruitment. I'm good at it. I don't have any qualifications. I can't go and, become a brain surgeon or, an architect or an engineer. That ship is kind of sailed for me. But I'm good at recruitment. It makes me money, but it's never been my passion, if that makes sense. So it's like, I've always had an objective. It's like, this year I'm going to buy a house, or the next year I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this. And so I take it sort of year to year. At that time, it was, I wanted to buy a house in New Zealand. Houses over there are very, very expensive. So it was getting enough capital, getting enough cash to execute upon that. And then it was, again, adding a bit more. But as life goes on, I've sort of built this, I've built this big network globally within the space that I operate within. And so I've wanted to build a business that is mobile. It's not specific to any one region. It doesn't need to be. It can be lifted and placed somewhere else. There's not like a foundation of 40 guys in the office. That means that, I'm going to have to, either relocate them all or anything else. That's not what I've wanted. I've kind of wanted, if I can throw a backpack on and go somewhere, the business can come with me, and it's still going to be as profitable and as productive, and that's what I've always wanted in terms of the recruitment side of things. And as I said, it's always been an ends to means, or means to an end.
I'm interrupting today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Atlas Recruitment CRM. Admin is a massive waste of time for recruiters. And that's why Atlas, the world's first AI-first recruitment platform, is built for modern agencies who don't want to do it. It doesn't only track CVs and calls. It remembers everything. Every email, every interview, every conversation. Instantly searchable, always available, and now it's entering a whole new era. With Atlas 2.0, you can ask anything and it'll deliver. With magic search functionality, you speak to it and it listens. It finds the right candidates using real conversations, not simply look up for keywords. For me, this would be massive because I spend most of my time talking to my CRMs, talking to my emails. I'm just better with voice. Probably why I got into recruitment in the first place. Now, Atlas 2.0 also makes BD easier than ever because they've got an opportunity section where you can track, manage, and grow client relationships powered by generative AI and built right into your workflow. If you need insights and reports, they've got custom dashboards that give you total visibility over your pipeline. And that's not theory. Atlas customers have reported up to 41% EBITDA growth and an 85% increase in monthly billings after adopting the platform. So there's no admin, there's no silos, there's no lost info, nothing but faster shortlists, better hires, and more time to focus on what actually drives revenue. Atlas is your personal AI partner for modern recruiting. Now, Don't miss the future of recruitment. Get started with Atlas today and unlock your exclusive RAG listener offer at www.recruitwithatlas.com/the-rag. All right, let's get back to the show. So it's about understanding your strengths. So you build the business up to 2024 and then you decide to move back to Ireland. So what did the company look like a year ago when you were moving back?
Yeah, so we streamlined a lot of stuff. I put a lot more sort of process in. I knew that there was going to be a shift in terms of what we were doing, how we were doing it. But to be honest, you can plan for a lot of this stuff, but actually when you're confronted with the cold light of day, those plans can kind of go wayward. The business we're probably, in terms of, we're not a big business. So, I mean, we're not talking about where our head count has increased 10, 20 or whatever, but our head count has increased in the last year by a few, I think by three or four. And so,
but you had
that's
Paddy in Australia and then he's now back in Ireland, right? So you were leaving a small team there that you then were planning on bringing back.
Again, yeah, and that's been the whole part of the business in itself, is that we can move back and we keep overheads on purposely low, because if I'm required, I seen your post there yesterday about the founder needing to achieve 250 grand a month. If I need to hit 250 grand a month, I don't have the freedom that I wanted when I started the business, because it means that, one, I need to employ a certain amount of people. I need to constantly achieve a certain amount of turnover every single month. And so for me, that doesn't equate to freedom. That equates to, actually, I'm under pressure here. There's a lot more stress involved. So we've kept overheads very, very low on purpose. So if we do, for example, go, hey, we want to try and move to Dubai, Middle East, I don't want to, but if that was on the agenda, that we could do that and we could make money pretty quickly. We could pay for ourselves pretty quickly. We could make profit pretty quickly.
How do you keep costs low and productivity high?
I'm pretty old school, Sean, if I'm honest. So we were talking offline about AI, and I've went through this sort of, I guess, 180 somewhat with AI, thinking, it's going to completely transform everything that we do. To actually, my sales pitch is, we don't use AI. We get in front of you. We'll understand you. We don't take a note. We don't have a note taker or whatever those are. We'll sit down and we'll listen and we'll learn and we'll execute. And for me, that's more powerful in the industry that we're in. We're in construction. Construction is no matter, there's only 14% women, I think, in construction. It's a blokey industry.
Yeah. And it is never going to be you're never going to AI a building, I don't think.
No, you're not.
It's not going to be out there building company. I mean, you never know, but I doubt it.
If you're in financial services, technology, that's the domain. That's AI is obviously really important. But what we're in a really tactile industry where trust and handshakes go a long way. And so for me, I've always kept overheads pretty low, because I'm actually looking at going, we've got 8 or 9 LinkedIn recruiter accounts. I'm taking that down to 2 and going, right, we're going old school cold calling. We're just cold calling, because everyone else is going out there and saying, you know what, I'm going to spend a certain amount with LinkedIn. And, our response rate on LinkedIn isn't great, but I would say it's probably industry average. So we would get, say, 20% acceptance rate on say 100 messages, right? And out of the 20, you might get 6 or 7 that respond, and you might get 2 that are interested. But if I rang 100 candidates, I'd probably get 20%.
But that also, you're just talking about LinkedIn Recruiter, right? But you've built 35,000 followers, and like only last week you talk about Sri Lankan QSs and you get 1,500 likes on a post. What were the impressions on that?
Over 150,000 or something like that.
Yeah, so that you can't buy that. Like LinkedIn Recruiter doesn't give you that.
No.
This is my argument, is like LinkedIn Recruiter is not an asset. It's a cost. It's an investment. And the reason people buy it is clear. You spend 5-6 grand a license, you hope to make a positive ROI on that investment because you can reach more people. You can but these people don't know you. It's cold. Like you said, the response rates are low. So how much more can you do now with your following and the actual connections? I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of cash to be made in that pot, right?
So what we do, we spend a lot of money on B2B marketing. Okay. So we collate a lot of, candidate and client information. We extract that, we put that into our CRM, and we utilize that within our CRM, and then we utilize that by myself constantly putting content out there. I know the book Daniel Priestley. What's the
Key person of influence.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the way I look at my role, is basically feeding the team from if that's job. For example, we took in probably 3 big clients last week off the back of my brand. And I don't want myself to look pig-headed here or big-headed in terms of I've got this huge brand. I don't, but it's fairly influential within the space that I work within, and if you continuously do it every single day, you're at the front and center of people's minds, and they're more likely to communicate and connect and engage. And that, my job now is being that key person of influence and feeding the team and feeding them with great people, great candidates, and basically.
So what percentage of your work? What percentage of the work comes to you guys now?
So it's a very candidate-driven market. So we don't do well. When people say they don't do BD, that's nonsense, because everything that you do is a version of business development. Marketing's business development. I spend all my time doing business development.
Well, you don't cold call companies and try and open doors. No.
But what we will do is I've been in the market for 14 years, predominantly within one niche. A candidate will reach out to us. I'll speak to the candidate, make them feel good, getting them involved. I'll pass them on to the team. The team will market them out, and we'll get on the phone and sell them on the phone. Yeah. It's not spamming the market to 150 contacts. No. It's getting on the phone.
That's the bit that AI will do, right? AI will go, oh yeah, we can automate that and automate the candidate's CV out to 15,000 contacts like that. That's going to happen, and it is happening. It doesn't make it quality. It doesn't mean it works well. And it's definitely not a differentiator when if you can say, I'll ring, to a candidate, I'm going to get you in front of 10 people that I've known for 15 years that are the best in the market. To a candidate, that's incredibly powerful. Equally, phoning a client you've known for 10 or 15 years and saying, look, I've just met this guy. You're going to want to meet him. Like, that's still incredibly powerful.
100%. And I think that in itself we're nearly losing that from the industry, where we're relying way too much on all of these tools. Like, I'm part of different groups online, and the whole discourse is around tools. Like, what can they use? And I'm like, why are you spending so much time on the next tool, the next the next piece of technology that comes out? Because I truly believe that recruitment is about connections. It's about relationships. And if you can do that by building yourself online, as well as doing that, for the old school analog manual way, that's what people, I think that's what clients want. And I think we're all starved of genuine human interaction. And I think it's really, really important that as recruiters, that we don't just sit and rely on software to do our job. It's never going to do our job for us.
And also, it's dangerous if we do rely on it too much, that it will replace us, right? It'll get that good. I believe, I agree with you to a degree. I think there's an element of someone like you. Think about what you're doing. Like, at times you're getting Paddy or someone else to phone, and probably they're going to be like, I work with Mick at Gedon, right? Your name's going to come up. So there's an element of you doing more through multiplication of people. Because if it's just you on your own, there's only so much you can do. But when you've got a few people around you, I think tools will do more of that. So I think tools can get your name and your message out for further and faster. I'm not saying every tool in the market. I think there's a absolute load of bullshit and overwhelm in the space right now. But there's a few tools that will get you in front of more people quicker. And there will be more. I believe that voice AI will become a really powerful element, that like you'll have a Mick AI in a few years that will sound like you, and it'll admit it's not you, but it'll be like, look, Mick is in a meeting right now, but he wants to talk to you, kind of book you in an hour. So where you were previously stuck, you'll be reaching out to 10 or 15 people to book them in faster. And I think those things will come. I think we've got to be aware that will come. But it's got to be pushing the human bit. It's got to be pushing the bit that we're good at. If it's replacing that, I don't think it's going to work, personally.
No, I agree. I mean, as I moved back home, I worked the Australian market. And so during that time, I was waking up early in the morning, 5 o'clock, and working, the afternoon hours in Australia. But during that time, I started to, research into it. How can, for example, like simple things like scheduling messages, like we still aren't there with, say, for example, WhatsApp. Like, like that's something WhatsApp's clearly holding back from us, for the next update in 5 years time or whatever it is. But there's things like that I think would have made a big impact on our business. For example, could we have had someone reaching out to candidates during Australian hours, and maybe doing that initial, screening, or, hey, we want to book you in for a 5 o'clock call today. How does that sound?
Yeah.
The
difference is without the Mick bit, without the bit that you've got, that you've built, that's just a load of shit, because you're basically AI-ing something to try and book a call with someone that the candidate doesn't even know. So they'll be like, and that's going to happen. That is going to happen. So there's going to be so much trust erosion, because they'll be like, I don't even know if this is a real person, real job, real agency. Like, it's going to go mad. Whereas when it's Mick and they know you and they trust you and the brand you've built is real, I think you'll be able to deploy software tools, people in, like, you've already deployed people in Colombia, for God's sake, and it's working. I think you've got so many more options when you're a brand that people trust than if you're not. That's my opinion.
Well, I think that's absolute 100%. And I think no matter what, if you're a brand that people trust, you'll make money. Because if your brand is, I work with an executive coach during lockdowns, and he was basically, like, he was someone that was recommended to me from the Irish Australian Chamber of Commerce, and he was so above my league at that point in time. I felt so out of my depth. Like, he was, coaching the heads of HSBC and stuff like that, but he said one thing to me that stuck with me, and it was like, brand, all that is bullshit. Brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah, it's other people's perception.
And that's all it is.
Other people's, but you've got to create it. We, this is what I say all the time. You're building a brand anyway. Like, your brand is, everyone's got a personal brand now in their personal life, in their friendship group. And if you probably notice what I talk about, I don't actually talk about personal branding online. I don't use that phrase very often. I don't believe in that phrase. I don't really like that phrase. Like, there's so many personal branding gurus on LinkedIn. To me, it's like, and you're doing this, right? You should be getting in more meetings as a result of the work that you're doing. Like, it's you said it before, actually. It's fucking business development, right? That's what it is. Let's just keep the word as what it's always been. It's just evolving how you do it. Yeah. So I look at everything I do is to get me on more meetings, get me and the team in more meetings with the right people. That's it. It's not about being famous. It's not so I go to an event and people go, oh, hey, Sean. Like, it's nice as that shit is. I don't do it for that reason. I do it to get into meetings, to make money, to be a trusted partner that people want to work with. That is it. And if it wasn't working and I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't do it. But it's not an if it works, it's a when it works, when you put the effort in. And it gives you opportunities to be, like, you're in rooms now internationally from Ireland, you're working in Australia. Like, that shit just would not have happened before we could do what we do.
And I think it's easier now than it's ever been as well, because I think COVID's, give us an opportunity that we can recruit in areas that we never would have recruited before. If you look at construction, as I mentioned, it's a really tactile industry. It's old school. It's blokey. There is a lot of, those old school principles. So, personal branding, AI to these guys is like, just goes over their head completely. But that has sort of evolved and changed. And I think, if there's other business leaders out there, I would highly recommend you talk about it all the time, niche down as much as possible. We've niche down to probably as much as we can. But it makes us borderless to an extent. It doesn't really matter whether the role is in Sydney or the role is in Dublin or London or Helsinki. We can work the job anywhere because our domain and our niche is so specific. Our brand is very clear and well known in the market that it evolves and it works effectively.
What I love about what you do, like there was a guy who was on the show recently, Ricky Burns, who is slightly different, right? He's similar numbers to you, incredibly profitable, product tech. They are very client led. So they're like, we only work with these types of companies and we will fill like a variation of roles for these companies. So they're like best mates with these companies, like everything about these companies. And they don't want too many clients. They want 16 clients will do 1.5 million quid, right? So that's one way of doing it. You're going down so I think you've either got to go like industry or geographically focused, or if you go niche vertical focus like you have, like you say, it's borderless. The only thing, and I don't know your market as well as you, obviously, like, is there a lot of repeat business in the customers you work with as well? Is there a lot of volume within accounts, or is it like ones and twos and then you just constantly need new clients all over the world?
Yeah, so 100%. I mean, one of our clients that we were working with was a major airport client. We've done about 800,000 with that one client. Wow. So we get a lot of repeat business, but what happens as you know, there's a new that was one client, new CEO comes in, they've got a different, all of a sudden everybody changes, they've got different hiring strategies, et cetera, the market changes, et cetera. So we have a lot of repeat clients, and we're even now looking at what we're doing in the European region. We're starting to see the same clients come back all the time. It's the same clients that have the same pain points and they're starved for this type of candidate, So we've been able to identify that pretty quickly. And
so the reality is you're never starting from scratch, are you? Like every time a client gives you an opportunity, you're like, we already have the network, we know what we're doing. Even if we don't have the exact name, we know exactly where we're going. Like it's a repeatable process every time. So you can really get fucking good at that, like really, really good at it, as opposed to picking up random jobs where you're trying to learn every time you pick it up like that.
Exactly. And the role of construction is so transient in terms of people move, right? So people move for the work. So for example, a guy that I have built a really good relationship with, Sydney, he's now in Riyadh, when he's getting on the phone to us. We've got a guy who I know really well from Perth is moved to Miami, Florida, and we're on the phone to him last week. And so, the world of construction, people are always moving. Luckily, I started the podcast by saying, Irish people as well. We are dispersed all over the world, and
there's over 60 million Irish passports in the world, right?
Exactly. I mean, imagine everyone moved home at once. But we've got this sort of like, speak to Mick, he's Irish, and he'll sort it for us, and there is that sort of I guess that cultural aspect of what we do as well, and that link, and I'm lucky enough that we've been able to sort of develop and build that out over the years.
So someone's listening, right, and they're either founder now or they're planning to be, and they're thinking, because I have a lot of conversations with people that are like about to start a business and they're not 100% sure the direction. Do they go down that niche vertical? Do they go down pure industry, location specific? And there's a million ways to skin the cat. I'll interview people that have done well in all areas, but what advice would you give if they're thinking about going like that? We're going to be a master of one vertical, like one type of candidate. What advice would you give people to make that count?
So, for example, if I was doing it again in a different vertical, one, I need to understand how many clients are in the space going to hire for that. So I would typically look at, say, for example, I want to move into a different city. I want to make sure the city has around 1.5 to 2 million people. I want to make sure that in my market, within that job title, there's at least probably about between 2,000 to 4,000 people on LinkedIn. That will mean that if you're getting 0.5% of that, you're going to be doing exceptionally well, you know? So I would reverse engineer it and make sure that there's enough, I guess, opportunity within the market before you start to specialize. Because if you start to specialize in an area where there's no demand, or it's oversaturated, or it's highly competitive, I wouldn't recommend it. We're in a niche where it's effectively a spine. So there's offshoots of that role that you maybe wouldn't have maybe initially recognized from the first instance, So if the spine of the role can develop into other job titles, that's really beneficial as well, because then you're not just working on the same job title all the time, because that will get your market will thin out quite quickly. It means you can also transfer candidates from one section to another, or position them in a different way, or pitch them in a different way. So I would also say keep it super lean. Document what you're doing every day. Take one candidate story every day. Candidates and clients are basically your business, or your content.
I've
And
said
so
that
it
one.
should, yeah, it should be. Spoke to a candidate today, and he told me this, and this is what I think about that. And then it's like, this client is facing this type of pain in the market.
Mick, you're giving away my business here for free. I'm going. I always say that.
And
It's not that complicated. It's just building it into a system that actually works, that people struggle with, because people just doubt themselves so much,
And I think the important thing is get on the phone, get meeting people, do those old school values work, and work for a reason. And they've made people lots of money in the past. They'll continue to make people lots of money in the future. And if you can combine that with a good brand, I think you'll do all right.
100%. In terms of your life then, so you mentioned about being selfish and trying to plan things. Like, where are we at now in terms of what are you building for? Like, what's the money that you generate? Well, firstly, what are the profit margins you're aiming to achieve in the business? What percentage are you trying to go for? And what are you going to do with the profit?
So I want my team all deliver really good life. I think that's really, really important. I think, for me, I want them to hit their financial targets, whatever that might be. Whether they want to buy houses, travel, whatever it is, I want them to hit their targets. So that's number one. And then number two, I recently just bought a 100-year-old sort of Georgian house. I bought that, outright in cash, because I just never wanted to be, stuck with a mortgage for the rest of my life. And so that was a big factor of me moving home. It's that would be possible, where it would be quite difficult if I was living in, say, Sydney or Auckland, where houses are more expensive. Moving forward, I think success is measured on how the hours that you work. So they're back, 5-6 years ago, it was all about the hustle culture, and how hard you're working. But for me, it should be about how the hours that you're working. For example, if I could work 20 hours a week in recruitment, and the team's hitting their goals, and we're hitting our targets, and that 20, I could do 20-30 hours a week on doing something else, that would be success to me, a massive success for me.
So I don't have to go back to financial. You've bought your house, so you paid your house off.
Mm-hmm.
So your big project's done. So have you got anything else that is it now, like you say, about working less, making a good living, and enjoying it? Is that what you're trying to say? Or
no, I wanna take the money and go and do other things with it. I'm more passionate about other areas of my life. I'd love to build like a big sauna community or sauna club in Ireland. I've got a building in Belfast that I would love to buy, and turn that into it's got huge potential. I would love to do that. My wife doesn't have to work anymore, so I would love to maybe do stuff with her from like a property development perspective. Those are the things that interest me. Making sure that my family are in a good position as well, that they're not, in a place where they're ever going to be struggling. So those are the things that motivate me more than, right, I want to have a business where I've got 25, 30, 40, 50 people. Because for me, I've listened to most of your show, Sean, and there's so many of these amazing founders that maybe exit the business, and then within 2 weeks they're finished, the board of they want to do it again. So I'm like, what's the point?
I always think to myself, no way is that going to be me. No fucking way. Would I sell Hoxo and launch Noxo the next day? Nah. But to get to that point then of doing the things like with your wife and building out the sauna, I mean, that's a whole different podcast, what you're doing in the sauna space. But Do you have a number each year you want to hit? Is there a financial goal each year, like from a profit perspective, that you want to hit?
If we were, so from profitability perspective, we're sitting around sort of 40%. I mean, if we could get more than that, that would be great. But realistically speaking, around 40% is probably where it is. You know, intrinsically, I am always motivated to make more. You know, but at the same time, I'm always happy if we have a certain amount. So if the business was making a net profit of 300-400 grand a year, I mean, I see that as going, you know, what's a brain surgeon earn?
Yeah. And
I don't
what are you?
know.
How old are you now, Mick?
I've just turned 34.
So you're 5 years younger than me as well. Fuck me, you got so much going for you right now. So 34, realistically, you do that for a few years, living in Ireland, you've got options to do whatever you want. Your life is ahead of you, isn't it? That's how I look at it.
Well, again, for me as well. So it is. I mean, I've sat down with, say, you know, you sit down with financially minded people. I'm maybe not the best in that respect, but if you make 300 grand net profit for 10 years, there's 3 million, you know, in the bank, you know, and I'm not someone who's motivated by a bigger house. I'm
Me
not
neither.
someone who drives, you know, I drive a Toyota Corolla, you know, like I'm not motivated by a big glamorous car. I
What?
don't even really, you know, I don't have these hobbies, say, for example, expensive hobbies like golf or anything like that.
No, me neither.
None of that really motivates me. What probably motivates me most is, you know, a healthy lifestyle. Is, you know, the crack that we have in the office. Honestly, like I could make the business totally remote. We'd probably do something similar in terms of the money, but see the crack that we have in the office, it's unmatched. And you know, there's a young fella that we brought on this year who's a grad. He was top biller last month, you know, and that to me is super motivating. You know, that seeing him going from kind of a shy, introverted character to someone who is tremendous on the phone, is fantastic, you know, in terms of his delivery. And so that motivates me. And then also just getting out there and doing other things. Life is too short. My mom died when she's 57. You know, life is genuinely too short to do something that you're not overly motivated by or not passionate about. You know, if I can make money and spend it on other things and do other things with it, for me, that's more motivating, as long as the guys in the office are
But
living a good life
it
too.
sounds like you've got a great balance. Like you've built a business that, relies on you from a brand perspective. You drive a lot of inbound business. You're not operationally tied to doing the work. You've got a team doing it. They're making money. If you can make 300-400K a year profit, like you say, 5 to 10 years, you're out the game. We're very similar, me and you, in the way that we think. I think, I live in a nice house in Sheffield. It's not, it's a beautiful place, but it ain't the biggest house, and it definitely isn't what London price is. And I drive a Mini and a Volvo. Like, we're not arsed. Like, I don't care. I don't have a watch on. I'm not bothered. But I have just bought a property in the Middle East near Dubai, cash.
Nice.
So, but it's a little 2-bed apartment on the beach near the first casino in the world that's been opened or will be opened in the Middle East. And I'm like, that's a forever like holiday home. And then I probably will end up living there, I see, with my wife when we're older, or at least spending the winter there. To have that done before I'm 40, I'm pretty happy with that, right? I'm like, that's a goal of mine. I'm like, yeah, that excites me now. And then I've had my kids, I've done my projects. So now I'm like, I want to do similar, build a property portfolio. My wife, she'll do the development. Like, there's all these things I want to do. I love my business, but it is about generating cash. It's about generating cash to do other things, not just to be a business owner for the sake of it. So I think I love what you're doing. One thing I would ask you about is your sobriety journey as well, because we've gone on a similar journey there, and you've worked with my buddy Keith, who I work with. How long ago did you take that plunge? I can't remember exactly when it was for you.
Probably about two and a half years ago, 2 years ago. So my I mean, I'm not completely sober now, Sean.
Right.
I mean, the way my relationship with alcohol has changed dramatically. So I would have, for example, drank once a week, you know, and you know, that would have made me feel pretty lethargic and crap. You know, now I would, if I moved back home to Ireland, and then you come back to the Irish culture, and it's like no one's going out for coffee, no one's doing any of that. It's like, I'll meet you for a pint, you know. But I think what's happened with myself is I've went through a bit of a journey in terms of I went through a year where I didn't drink at all and didn't, touch drink, and to the point where I felt like I give it too much respect in terms of like it doesn't control me. It doesn't have this, gravitas over me. I decide if I don't. For example, my best friend came home. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. We had a couple of pints, and you have a bit of crack, and that's good, and I know there's going to be one date in the calendar in about 2 months' time. I go, I'll probably have a few drinks that night, but it's not like I have this, relenting.
But do you think you could have had that without the break?
No, I think the break is just what it does is it gives you a totally different perspective, where you feel like you don't have anything else to do. You go, so you go drinking, that you always just feel like they're in this perpetual state of slightly hungover, you don't always feel your best, and what that year, basically, I started going to, I mentioned about the saunas. I started doing saunas basically every day. I start making connections with people in the sauna, and that starts becoming my passion. I really enjoy that now. It's something I absolutely love. Like if someone goes, would you rather drink a pint or spend 20 minutes in the sauna? I'm going to the sauna all day.
How often do you go then now?
Oh, every day, I do half an hour, and you just feel much better for it. But in terms of the drinking, I no longer have this sort of weight that I feel like I'm a drinker. I don't. If I want to have a few drinks for that night in 2 months' time, I'll do it. But if I don't want to, I won't. But I don't want to be the guy here who's sitting saying, I've been sober for 2 years. But the last year I've had a few occasions. But it hasn't taken anything away from me in that respect.
It isn't about being black or white for everyone, is it? It's about finding what works for you. But I guarantee that's had an impact on your success in your business, on your mindset, and all the things you're achieving. The fact that you've built a better relationship there has an impact in other places, which is great to see.
I think it's just the balance aspect of it all that you're not. I was pretty out of balance, I would have said. Those late 20s or maybe even early 30s, where in recruitment it is, champagne and razor blades, it is drinking 4 nights a week, and I did all of that. And in some ways I'm glad I did, to be honest, Sean, because I met some of my best friends. I met some of my best clients. I made the best memories, during that period of time. But now as life goes on, I go, am I a habitual drinker? That's just not for me. It's just not what I'm about, and I speak to some of the guys in the office, and they've had a few drinks at the weekend and they've got sore heads on a Monday, and that's not who I am anymore, and I feel so much better for it.
I love it. So final question then, if we got you back on in a year's time, Mick, what do you think? What would you want to be telling us? Where would you be then?
I want to be working less, doing more outside of recruitment, and empowering the guys in the team to do more of what I do every day, making them feel confident enough that they can go about doing what I do, and in terms of a business development perspective, which they have started to do, and their personal brands or whatever you want to call it, that's starting to build up. And to be honest, the most important thing is that my wife is healthy, that my family's healthy, that that we're in a good position. That's to me, that's all that really genuinely matters. And if we make a good living and we can continue to grow slowly, I'm happy with that.
Good on you, mate. Look, I wish you the best of luck. Thanks so much for giving us your time, Mick. And we will get you on in the future, because I reckon there'll be some interesting stories to tell.
Sean, it's a pleasure.
Top man. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the RAG podcast. If you haven't already, please do subscribe wherever you listen to this show, as the more subscribers we get, the more people will listen and the more recruitment owners we can help. As a recruitment founder, you must know that things are changing. AI is everywhere. Cold outreach is getting harder, and job boards, well, they're not what they used to be. But personally, Despite the negativity, I believe the future is the greatest opportunity of our lifetime in recruitment, because for the first time ever, a founder with 5 recruiters with a clear niche and the right systems can build the kind of influence, reach, and profitability that used to take 500 recruiters and a global office network. The agencies that are winning right now aren't necessarily the biggest, but they are the most visible, the most trusted, and the ones building inbound demand. At Hoxo, we're working with clients who are running multiple 6 and 7 figures in net profit, outperforming the negative noise and headlines. So, to explain what these guys are doing, I've created a brand new free masterclass video for RAG listeners. In this video, it's less than 10 minutes long. I'm going to show you what these businesses are doing differently from the rest. So the link's in the description. Fill in the form, watch the video, and see exactly how this system that these clients are using could work for your agency. Good luck.